There's a question on the parking app, but let me just ask you a yes or no question to kind of keep the time going. Based on your previous answer, am I to understand that you do not believe or feel that the parking application was appropriate use of funds, and perhaps the projections of its costs and or benefit were perhaps misguided?
Yes, I don't think it was a good use of funds, and I could go on, but I won't.
I thought you'd answer that in the past, but it's one of our questions, so I wanted to hit it. There's several here that go up and they talk during members of the audience. Many times they feel ignored or insulted by the city manager. Their concerns are kind of just blown off, for lack of a better descriptive. If elected, what action would you take to remedy that action or those situations in which people who come up to express an opinion feel really just slighted because their opinions from their perspective don't matter to the city?
I take it that you probably can't respond to every public comment that's made over the course of a year. But if you're in touch with what the residents want, and an issue comes up week after, meeting after meeting, then I think it's probably appropriate to respond. Or have, and even if that response is, we don't agree and we don't hear this issue from the other parts of the city. I think that might be a fair response in some situations. And if that's the truth, well, at least you know where you stand, and maybe other residents don't stand with you. If that's not the truth and you know it's not the truth, then you would hope that the city council is in touch with the needs and the wants of the residents. Then they would direct the city staff appropriately. And at least there's 5 city councilmen, and I would only be one. At least a city councilman putting it on the public record would be welcomed as a starting point to this needs to be addressed. We hear this all the time, and to not address it, to not say anything, would be the same as ignoring someone and leading people like me that I don't know if you're in touch with what we're really looking for.
Before city council meetings that are televised, there's a study session that happens beforehand upstairs from the council chambers. It's not televised like the normal 7 o'clock meetings. But admittedly, if you go to those, that's where most of the discussion and that's where most of the decisions are really made prior to the meeting. That's why when you go to the meetings and they do a vote, they'll hit 6 or 7 items at a time because they've talked about it in this study session. Would you be open and would you support televising that session also?
Sure. There might be things that are of a legal nature that need to be confidential until they're out, but eventually the details of those things need to be eventually discussed and brought to the forefront for the public also. But some record would be helpful. If you've got something to say, I don't think you should be afraid to say. If you're representing the public, then you should be open to whatever window they want to look through at you. And I would say, and a lot of people don't know that the study sessions are open to the public. For the longest time, I was not aware, because it's made it look like it's a closed session or something that's private. But I think it's an important part of openness in government. It's our funds, essentially, and we can have some insight into that process. And then it's up to the residents if they want to do that and educate themselves, but it should be available.
Great, and I've got one more question, and we'll see if we have time for questions from the audience. Often new businesses donate money, which is repeatedly passed on to pay-per-view programs. How should donations be directed so that they are spread to many worthy causes, and just as opposed to just a few council or staff favorite ones?
Are these strict donations in the sense of the word donations? Well, I think some of that's up to the donor. If you know, I've been on committees with the Little League, Cub Master for a Cub Scout pack and so forth, and we got donations. Some were general. I was on the board as an industry representative to the gaming industry. I was on the board for California Council on Problem Gambling. We got lots of donations that were just general fund. We got other donations that were specific. They wanted to, you know, fund a particular thing that was near to their heart. So I think the donor should have a lot of say in those cases. When they don't, then I think it should be spread amongst as many city departments, you know, that we can, and not just necessarily pet projects. If those donations, you know, frankly, I haven't seen a list of donated money and projects and so forth. Another thing that should be open and available. Agendas aren't wrong. Someone having a particular agenda isn't wrong, just so that everybody knows what the agenda is. Go from there. If someone wants to donate money for a particular project, we should respect their wishes. If it's just a general donation, we should try to do as much for the overall city as possible and spread that out amongst as many departments as possible.
Then we're on, I guess we're on 17, but do you want to go ahead and go to questions from the audience?
I think 17 is the last one.
Right.
So yeah.
Questions before we that one.
Yeah, I just wanted to go to tag on to the one that you just answered about donations. Recently, we just had an issue with regard to a donation of $50,000 toward the gazebo. Do you have an opinion about that at the park? Are you familiar with that particular decision? The Barney Fife or whatever? Barney Barnes, I'm sorry, bandstand.
Is this where we're renaming the gazebo for this donation?
Actually naming it, it's never been
It's
named,
never
it's
been
just
named.
been referred to as the gazebo at City Hall Park.
Right. You know, I'm not completely familiar with the history, you know, so I'd have to get a little bit more information, but oftentimes in business, you got to make a decision based on limited information, and sometimes you need to make it quick. I don't think this is one of those decisions that needs to be made overnight, but I understand the Straw Optimist Club originally helped go. Well, I would think they would have a say in that. They constructed it. They were a donor also. So with their blessing, then you know, maybe it's an appropriate use. Does it fulfill the things that they were looking for the gazebo to do? And is someone's name on it a fair cost to pay for the benefit of what the Straw Optimist Club was trying to achieve with the gazebo? If not, then I think we've got to respect their wishes also. They started it, and if it needs refurbishing and we have no other way to refurbish it, well, then we need to do a better job on selling them that, or perhaps exploring other options. There's nothing wrong with, this is not a dire life or threat, life or death situation. Maybe we need to explore other options with that. And the current people that are making the offer, I would make the same promise to them if in fact that it was deemed that their donation was the best use and we would put their name on it. 25, 30, 40 years from now, we would give them the same benefit. I would hope that they would appreciate that we would give them the same benefit that we gave the Straw Optimist Club. And I don't think they would, it would surprise me if they didn't appreciate that same thoughtfulness on their donation too. I find it if you're asked to, someone asks you to treat someone else badly for their benefit, I always wonder, what are those people thinking? Because if you'll do it to one person, you'll do it to another. So I think it needs to have some exploration and some input from instructors.
Actually, I think it was the back, but I first.
My question is a follow-up on the Boys and Girls Club. That particular organization is situated on City Park, the sweetheart deal that you referred to. It's currently run by a board of directors from outside the city. There are two members from each city who sit on the board, which brings the voting, the imbalance of voting, a 2-to-1 against the city of Brea. To bring things in a proper perspective, rich and powerful families within our city built that facility, paid every nickel for it. The land belongs to the citizens of Brea because it's parkland, yet we have no or limited control over anything that goes on. As a result of an agreement signed by our council with no provisions put in it for who's going to control that particular property. So even if this group does pick itself up, the city in its wisdom has created a situation where we've lost total control of the particular situation. And my question is, how do we regain control of our own city parkland? I believe that the citizens should be running or have a say in that. And since we built it, it's on our land, we should have some sort of a majority opinion what goes on. What's your opinion on that?
Well, certainly that's not a situation we should get ourselves into in the future. And I think the council itself, in other instances, has tried to avoid situations like that. The sports park is one that comes to mind that was delayed until it was completely funded. So it's strange that not a lot of oversight was given to that. However, at this stage of the game, those are the cards that are dealt us, and we need to, there's a contract there. At some point, the Boys and Girls Club and the city eventually work together. We've got to have a trust. They need to represent that the benefit they're providing in the use of our facilities, our land, is also beneficial to us. If they live up to their end of the deal, this may be a situation where we don't have oversight. I'm not sure of the specifics on the contract, only that we shouldn't get ourselves in a situation like that again. If there's a way for us to achieve some control, perhaps the Boys and Girls Club and its board would see that that's beneficial for the community to embrace them and not be at odds with them. Perhaps they would give up some control. I don't know if that's been explored, or they would welcome and take some input from us to show good faith. I think that we show good faith to them. If not, I think the cards are dealt. We're going to deal with what it is. If they don't represent and continue to operate in a way that's beneficial to us, I think we've got to look at alternatives and how we can encourage them. Encourage can have a broad meaning there, but it should be for the benefit of everybody. Since we put so much into this, it should be more of a partnership.